My mother didn't call. She didn't explain, she didn't soften it with concern, or pretend it was complicated. She sent a text. Avery, please don't come. The family wants a drama-free wedding. That was it, no greeting, no apology, no discussion, just a clean sentence, carefully trimmed of emotion. 10 seconds later, my sister liked the message, a small blue thumbs up, quiet. Final dot. As if agreeing that the simplest way to protect peace was to erase me. I was sitting in my office in downtown Seattle, 30 floors above the street, the windows washed in late afternoon light. The city below moved the way it always did, busy, confident, unconcerned. Inside, everything went still. I stared at my phone long, enough for my pulse to become loud in my ears. I didn't cry, I didn't call her, I didn't ask why. I typed one word, understood. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. That single word felt like placing something fragile down very carefully and stepping away. Not surrender. Recognition. Because the truth was, that text didn't come out of nowhere. It landed exactly where it had been preparing to land. My entire life. To understand how my own mother could decide I was a risk to harmony, you'd have to go back to Tacoma, to a small diner just off a busy road where my childhood lived between the smell of fryer oil and exhaustion that never quite lifted. My dad, Jack, ran the place. His hands were always warm, always moving, refilling coffee, wiping counters, flipping burgers with a kind of steady patience that never asked for attention. He believed hard work spoke for itself. My mother, Marion, worked nights in the ICU. She came home when the world was quiet, carrying the weight of machines and emergencies and decisions no one wanted to make. Silence wasn't just something she liked, it was something she needed. She guarded it like oxygen. And then there was my sister, Lena, bright, effortless. The kind of person who could enter a room and immediately sense what version of herself was required. She didn't push, she adapted, she smoothed edges just by existing. If my mother breathed silence, Lena breathed convenience. She fit perfectly into the version of peace my mom craved: calm, agreeable, pretty in a way that never challenged anyone, easy to love because she never demanded anything difficult. I was everything else. I asked questions. I noticed patterns. I wanted explanations, not reassurance. I struggled with pretending things were fine when they weren't at our dinner table. Whenever I spoke about something real, school, ideas, how systems worked, my mother's expression would tighten just slightly. Let's keep dinner light, Avery, she'd say. Her voice was gentle, careful, but it bruised anyway. Lena would follow it with something cheerful, a funny story, a harmless comment, and the relief on my mother's face felt like a door closing softly between us. It wasn't that they didn't love me, it was that loving me required effort, and loving Lena required none. Over time, the roles hardened. Lena became the easy one. I became the weight. No one announced it, no one needed to. The family adjusted around it the way people adjust furniture. They don't want to trip over. Work became the only place where my intensity wasn't treated like a flaw. In Seattle, I co-founded a logistics startup with Caleb, my closest friend, my business partner, and the closest thing I've ever had to a brother. He understood that my mind ran hot and fast, always building, always connecting dots. Sarah, our operations lead, once described me as focus with a pulse. Here, my ambition wasn't too much, it was exactly right, but every time I went home, the air shifted. My mother lowered her voice. My dad avoided conflict the way he avoided grease fires: quick, quiet, efficient, and Lena floated through it all, polished by approval. When she got engaged to Eric, the wedding planning became a full-scale performance. Lena was meant to be the lead, but her future mother-in-law Elaine held the script. Elaine was elegance sharpened into expectation. Every detail had to be refined, controlled, quiet, especially quiet. And every time my name came up even casually, I saw it. The flicker of anxiety in my mother's eyes. The silent plea, don't stir the water, don't disrupt the image, don't be you. I should have known then, in a story built entirely on preserving peace, someone like me would always be the first thing they cut. The months leading up to the wedding felt like watching my sister slowly disappear behind layers of chiffon and expectation. Every call sounded rehearsed, her voice thinner, shaped by someone else's preferences. Elaine had opinions on everything: flowers, seating, posture. Ella thinks soft curls look messy in vineyard photos, Lena said once, twisting a strand of her hair around her finger. I paused. Do you like soft curls? Silence. That told me everything. Meanwhile, my role in the wedding kept shrinking. First, I wasn't included in the photos. Then, my speech was quietly removed. Then, any mention of my work was discouraged. It's just heavy. Avery, Lena said once, apologetic but firm. You know how mom gets. I did know. I'd known my whole life. Whenever I showed emotion, excitement, conviction, frustration, it was labeled too much. Whenever Lena smiled and agreed, it was perfect. Still, something new was forming beneath the old hurt. Not anger. Awareness. It surfaced fully the afternoon my family visited Seattle to finalize wedding logistics. We sat in a small restaurant near my office. I hadn't even taken my coat off when Lena leaned in with a practiced smile. Hey, she whispered. When you come to the rehearsal dinner, can you keep the conversation light? I blinked. What does that mean? She hesitated. Nothing about work, or climate stuff, or supply chains. You know, she searched for the word. Intensity. The same word my mother used when describing storms on the news. Before I could respond, my mother joined in, her voice soft, pleading. Your sister just wants a peaceful evening. These events matter to her. It landed like a verdict. My voice threatened peace. I swallowed the response the way I always had. But Caleb saw it. Later, outside the restaurant, he said quietly, you know that's not normal, right? Normal or not, I replied. It's familiar. The final shift came a week later. I was on the phone with my parents, telling them about a new statewide contract my company was negotiating, the kind of opportunity that would expand our impact significantly. My dad congratulated me. Then my mom cut in gently. Sweetheart, we're happy for you, truly, but maybe save the work talk for another time. Wedding stress is high enough. There it was again. The request to make myself smaller, quieter, easier. I hung up feeling hollow, and in that quiet space, something settled. I wasn't a storm. I wasn't the problem. My family had simply built their peace on the assumption that I was. Nothing prepared me for how far they'd go to protect that illusion. Because the very next message would redraw the entire map of where I belonged. The text arrived on a Tuesday, ordinary, unremarkable. Was reviewing projections with Sarah when my phone lit up. Didn't expect anything unusual until I saw the sender. My mother. The preview tightened my stomach. Before I even opened it, Avery, please don't come. The family wants a drama-free wedding. For a moment, I thought it had to be a mistake. Then Lena liked it. That small blue icon settled everything. It wasn't impulsive, it was agreed upon, planned a quiet removal. I replied with one word, understood. And for the first time in my life, my silence wasn't compliance, it was choice. The days after the text passed quietly, no follow-up message, no check-in. No explanation offered. Just absence. It was strange how quickly my place in the family reorganized itself once I was officially removed. Group chats went silent. Plans were discussed without me. Updates came indirectly, if at all. I didn't push for information. I didn't ask to be reconsidered. I let the silence speak back. At work, things moved forward. At home, I moved inward. The contrast was sharp enough to notice, but dull enough to endure. I went through my routines: early mornings, late evenings, careful meals eaten standing at the kitchen counter. The kind of days that don't ask how you're doing. One afternoon, Sarah caught me staring out the office window longer than usual. You okay? She asked. I nodded. Just thinking. She didn't press. She never did. The first escalation came disguised as practicality. A courier delivered a box to my apartment. Inside were the shoes I'd bought for the wedding, neatly wrapped, untouched. No note, no explanation. Just the return. Felt intentional without being confrontational, like setting something back on a shelf and pretending it had never belonged to you. I placed the box in my closet and closed the door. The second escalation came from my Aunt Janet, in a voice message that tried to sound neutral. Hey, Avery, just wanted to let you know seating is tight, and things got a little complicated. I'm sure you understand. I did understand. Understanding had always been my role. As the wedding approached, the exclusions became more precise. The rehearsal dinner photos appeared online. My parents were there. Lena glowed. Everyone smiled as if the atmosphere were weightless. No one looked uncomfortable. No one looked like they were missing anyone. That realization stung more than the initial text because it confirmed something I had avoided naming. My absence made things easier. Calmer. Cleaner. At night, I replayed moments I'd once dismissed. The gentle redirections, the soft corrections, the praise for my sisters. Adaptability. The pattern wasn't new. It was just complete now. A few days before the wedding, Caleb called. You free Friday? He asked. I thought you were traveling. Plans changed. Big one came through. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. Caleb never used excitement as leverage. He waited for results. That Friday morning, I sat across from him and Sarah in the conference room, papers spread neatly across the table. The contract was finalized. The venue. I skimmed the document, my attention snagging on a familiar address. I paused. Wait, I said quietly. Is this the vineyard in Woodin? Caleb nodded. Yes. Bought it last year. Through the holding company? The air shifted. That's where my sister's wedding is, I said. Sarah looked up sharply. You're kidding. I'm not. The room went still. Caleb leaned back, studying my expression. You didn't know? I shook my head. He exhaled slowly. Avery, your name is on the deed. I laughed once, not from humor, from disbelief. That's not possible. It is, he said gently. You signed the paperwork after your dad passed. The estate transfer. Remember, I did remember. Barely. The months after my father's death had been heavy, fogged with logistics and unspoken grief. My mother had handled most of it. I'd signed where she told me to. Apparently, not everything had been disclosed. The vineyard purchased years earlier under my father's long-term planning had been placed in a trust, one that named me as sole owner upon his passing. My father, the quiet one, the man who believed in work. Speaking for itself, he hadn't announced it. He hadn't warned anyone. He'd just prepared. I sat back in my chair. 100 thoughts rushed in, then settled. The timing was impossible to ignore my absence from the wedding. The quiet confidence with which I'd been removed. All while standing on ground that legally belonged to me. Caleb watched me carefully. What do you want to do? I didn't answer right away, because for the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. The wedding weekend arrived wrapped in soft weather and curated beauty. Photos flooded social media. White fabric, candlelight, champagne flutes held at precise angles. I wasn't there. Instead, I stood at the edge of the vineyard 2 hours before the ceremony, wearing a simple black dress and neutral shoes. Not as a guest, as the owner. I kept my distance. No announcement, no disruption, no confrontation, just presence. Elaine noticed first. Her posture shifted when she saw me, speaking quietly with the venue manager. Her eyes narrowed, calculating. She approached, smile fixed. Excuse me, she said politely. This area is reserved. I met her gaze. Yes, I replied. It is. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Her smile faltered. I handed her the documents. The realization moved across her face slowly, like a shadow passing. Before she could respond, the wedding coordinator approached the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, she said warmly, before we begin, there's a brief acknowledgement. We need to make the room hushed. I didn't look at my family. I didn't look at my sister. I watched the vines sway gently in the breeze, and we'd like to thank Avery Collins, the coordinator continued, the legal owner of this beautiful property, for hosting today's celebration. Silence fell, then murmurs. Not shock, recognition. I didn't stay. I didn't need to, because the truth had arrived without me delivering it, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't the disruption. I was the context. I found out what happened at the reception later. Not because anyone told me. Because people always talk when a story shifts. By the time I was back in Seattle, the whispers had already traveled faster than the truth ever could. A colleague mentioned it first, casually, during a meeting break. Hey, is it true you own a vineyard? I blinked. I do. He laughed softly. Well, that explains the mood shift I heard about. Iden Esquity meant. I already knew. My mother called the next morning. Her voice sounded careful, measured, the same voice she used when she wanted to manage something fragile without acknowledging it was already broken. I didn't know, she said. I let the silence stretch. Not to punish her, to let her hear herself. You didn't know, I repeated. No, she said quickly. I mean, I knew your father had investments, but I didn't realize that I owned the venue. I finished. Yes. Another pause. I didn't think it mattered. I closed my eyes. That sentence carried decades inside it. It mattered, I said. You just didn't think I did. She inhaled sharply. For the first time in my life, she didn't correct me. Lena didn't call. She texted. Short messages. Fragmented. People are asking questions. Elaine is furious. Eric says this is humiliating. I read them without replying. Not because I didn't care, but because this was no longer my role to manage. The realization spread quietly. Guests replayed the announcement in their minds. Family members filled in the gaps. The story rearranged itself, without my help. And in that new version, the problem was no longer my intensity. It was the erasure. People began to ask questions my family had never prepared answers for. Why wasn't Avery invited? Why would you exclude the owner of the venue? Why would a family do that? There were no satisfying explanations. Only discomfort. Elaine tried to regain control. She framed it as a misunderstanding, a scheduling issue, a miscommunication, a very private family matter. But her composure cracked when someone mentioned my award ceremony. Forbes, a guest asked. That was the same night, right? The timing was too clean to ignore. The narrative slipped. Lena called that evening. Her voice was different, lower, uncertain, double quotes. I didn't think it would turn into this, she said. I sat at my kitchen table, hands folded around a mug I hadn't touched. It already was this, I replied. She exhaled shakily. They're all looking at me like I did something wrong. I stayed quiet. Avery, she whispered, I just wanted everything to be easy. I thought of our childhood, of dinners kept light, of questions unasked. Easy for who? I asked. She didn't answer. The fallout wasn't explosive. It was slow, uncomfortable, unavoidable. My mother stopped defending herself and started listening. My father's absence, his quiet planning, his unspoken faith in me suddenly made sense to everyone else. And Lena began to see what it meant to be protected so thoroughly that you never learn how to stand. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't demand apologies. I didn't explain my side. Because the truth didn't need volume, it just needed space. Weeks later, my mother visited Seattle. No speech prepared, no corrections offered. She sat across from me in a small cafe and said, simply, I didn't protect you. I nodded. That's all I needed you to say. She cried quietly. I didn't reach for her hand, not out of cruelty, out of clarity. The peace I found wasn't loud, it didn't come with triumph. It came with alignment. For the first time, my presence didn't need permission. And my silence didn't mean erasure, it meant choice. Nothing dramatic happened after that. No confrontations, no family meetings, no long messages trying to explain what should have been obvious. Years ago, things simply rearranged. My mother stopped calling every day. Lena stopped asking me to smooth things over. And for the first time, no one asked me to be lighter, easier, or quieter. The silence felt different. Now it wasn't imposed, it was chosen. I returned to work, fully. Not as as grounding. The office felt steady, familiar, honest. Caleb didn't ask how my family was doing. He didn't need to, he just said, you're clearer. And he was right. When you stop negotiating your place in people's lives, your energy returns. A month later, Lena asked to meet. No urgency in her message, no emotional hooks, just, if you're open, I'd like to talk. We met halfway neutral ground. She looked older, not in years, in awareness. I didn't realize how much of myself I gave away, she said, staring into her cup. I thought being agreeable was the same as being loved. I let her sit with that thought. You weren't protected, I said calmly. You were shaped. Her eyes filled but she nodded. I don't know who I am without everyone else's expectations. I met her gaze. You'll figure it out. Just don't ask me to disappear while you do. She didn't. And that mattered. My mother tried differently, not perfectly, differently. She listened more than she spoke. She asked questions, without rushing to resolve them. She didn't interrupt when things felt uncomfortable. Once, she said, I thought peace meant silence. I replied, peace means room. She didn't argue. I didn't reclaim my place in the family. I redefined it. I stopped attending events where my presence felt conditional. I declined conversations that required self-editing. I didn't announce boundaries, I lived them, and slowly, the dynamic shifted, not because I demanded it, but because I no longer participated in my own erasure. The vineyard changed hands quietly, no drama, no celebration. Just acknowledgement. I wasn't introduced as the difficult one anymore. I was introduced as the owner. Not because of status. Because of truth. Sometimes people ask if I regret missing the wedding. I don't. I was never meant to be there as myself. And I've learned that absence, when chosen, can be an act of self-respect. If you've ever been told you're too much when all you did was exist, honestly. If you've ever been uninvited, not just from events, but from belonging, know this: you don't have to shrink to keep the peace. You don't have to explain yourself to be worthy, and you don't need permission to take up space. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe, because sometimes the quietest truth is the hardest to ignore.